Did you know that millions of men around the world can trace their paternal lineage directly back to one man? The exact person, Temujin, better known as Genghis Khan, the warrior who conquered most of Asia and Eastern Europe, murdered millions, and established the largest contiguous empire in history. You may have heard some of his deeds before, but his full story is far more amazing than you might think. So join me today as we journey into the heart of the Mongolian steppe and bring the warrior who shaped the world back to life. This is the fire that forged a legend. From humble beginnings, he became the scourge of Asia and Eastern Europe. Yet many forget that he was once a young boy who lost everything in a night of treachery and violence. He spent years as an outcast, learning the ways of survival, fighting tooth and nail to lead his people. And when he tasted power, he became the greatest conqueror in human history. This is part one of our two-part series on the warrior who changed the world. This is Genghis Khan. Welcome to History Pulse. Now, if you're new here, welcome to the best place for epic historical storytelling. Each week, we bring you a new adventure from across 12,000 years of the past. Now, if you're a fan of epic stories and larger-than-life heroes, then make sure to subscribe for more adventures. The year is 1162 AD, and our story begins not in a palace, but in a yurt camp on the Eurasian steppes. Here, in this sea of grass, a small tribe of Mongols is preparing for bed after a day of tending animals and gathering food. But peace does not last long. As the sun dips below the horizon, a group of armed horsemen ride towards the unsuspecting camp. They are Tatars, sworn enemies of the Mongols, and they attack without warning. Our young protagonist, Temujin, watches helplessly as his father, Yesugei, tries to defend his family. However, it isn't long before the chief is stabbed in the back by a Tatar archer. The family's worst fears are confirmed. The great leader is dead. Before his passing, however, Yesugei is able to pass down his most prized possession to his eldest son, Temujin, a golden seal that symbolizes leadership within the clan. But the family's troubles are far from over. In the ensuing chaos, Temujin's mother, Holun, flees with her children in search of safety, but the Tatars catch up with them soon enough, and Holun hides her children near a riverbank while she distracts the attackers. When the coast is clear, the family flees north to find refuge with another Mongol tribe. But Temujin's uncle, Kublai, is reluctant to take them in and forces Temujin and his brother into marriage with two of his daughters. At this point, the young prince has already displayed traits that will define him for the rest of his life. Even though he is only 10 or 11 years old, Temujin has a strong sense of justice and fairness, which shines through even in his youth. In fact, not long after living with his uncle, Temujin and his brother are forced to flee after a fight over livestock. Now homeless and stateless, Temujin and his brother go back to where they grew up to discover their father's grave has been robbed. They hunt down the thieves, and Temujin kills one of them in self-defense. This results in the young fugitive becoming a wanted man in a region that refuses to accept him. For the next few years, Temujin survives on his own with his wife, Borte, and his newborn baby. It's a time of hardship and struggle, but also one of great personal growth for the future Khan. Finally, after several years of surviving on their own, Temujin and his brother reconcile with their father's sworn brother, Jamuka. Together, the three brothers rebuild their father's coalition and become powerful warlords. But soon enough, Temujin begins to clash with the others over leadership. He defeats Jamuka in battle, forcing the rival Khan to flee. Temujin then establishes himself as the supreme ruler of the Mongol tribes. His title, Genghis Khan, meaning ocean or righteous leader. Now you might be wondering, why did the Mongols unite under Temujin's banner? Well, there were multiple reasons. First, Genghis was a brilliant diplomat who knew how to play the game of politics better than anyone else. Second, he offered his followers a chance for revenge against their enemies. And third, Genghis promised to unite the Mongol tribes under a single banner so that they could face their rivals as one. However, while Genghis had managed to unite the various tribes under one banner, the Khans of neighboring regions were not keen on letting him expand further. The Xiongnu, a nomadic confederation, were especially troublesome and constantly harassed Mongol trade caravans. Genghis wasn't going to stand for it. In 1201, he launched a surprise nighttime attack on the Xiongnu, completely wiping out their army and turning the tide in the Mongols' favor forever. Now, even though Genghis had managed to unify the Mongols and defeat the Xiongnu, he was still just one of many powerful rulers in the region. If he wanted to conquer all of Asia and Eastern Europe, he would need an army like never seen before. Fortunately for Genghis, the Mongols had a unique way of fighting that allowed them to raise a massive army without breaking a sweat. You see, the Mongols lived in a region with almost no trees, so they built portable tents called yurts instead of houses. This made it easy for them to pack up and move with their herds whenever the weather turned bad. It also meant that when Genghis needed to raise an army, his men could quickly pack up their things and hit the road. Moreover, the Mongols had a tradition of only levying soldiers from men between the ages of 20 and 40, with the rest of their population being free to pursue whatever they wanted. Genghis took advantage of this tradition by promising his soldiers land and riches beyond their wildest dreams if they helped him conquer the outside world. In return, Genghis expected absolute loyalty and obedience from his men. Now, even though this system worked well for the Mongols, it wasn't without its drawbacks. See, when a Mongol soldier died in battle, his family lost their home and had to live in tents until they could find somewhere else to live. Nevertheless, the Mongol army grew rapidly under Genghis's rule. Now, if you want to learn about what happened next, well then you'll have to tune in next time. Join us as we continue the saga of the warrior who shaped the world. In part 2, we'll see Genghis Khan's army in full force as he conquers northern China, Central Asia, Persia, and Eastern Europe. We'll also get to see his strategies in action, including the use of horse archers, feigned retreats, and psychological warfare. So don't miss out. Make sure to subscribe now. All right, welcome back to History Pulse. Now that we've seen how Genghis Khan unified his people and created a massive army, it's time to see it in action. We'll start with a small battle simulation to give you a taste of what's to come. Then we'll follow Genghis as he conquers northern China. Now, even though the Mongol army was massive, they weren't invincible. In fact, in 1209, they suffered a humiliating defeat at the hands of the Western Xia dynasty. However, the following year, Genghis got his revenge by leading a massive invasion force into Xia territory. After laying siege to the capital, Genghis's army finally captured the city after weeks of fighting. However, not all was well. The war had taken a heavy toll on the Mongol army, and they were in desperate need of supplies. To make matters worse, the Western Xia had fled into the mountains, where they were safe from the Mongol army. Genghis knew he had to do something drastic if he wanted to win the war. So he ordered his army to set up camp around the mountains and begin hunting down the Xia troops. This tactic paid off, and the Western Xia were eventually defeated. In the meantime, Genghis had turned his attention to the Khwarezmid Empire. Genghis sent an envoy to demand submission, but the vizier executed the messenger. This insult prompted Genghis to launch a full-scale invasion. His army split into two groups, with one crossing the Oxus River and the other entering Khwarezmia proper. Now, even though Genghis's army was outnumbered, they were able to defeat the Khwarezmians thanks to their superior tactics. The Mongols used feigned retreats to lure the enemy out of their fortifications and then surrounded them, cutting off their escape. Once the Khwarezmians were in the open, the Mongols unleashed their deadly cavalry charges, slaughtering the enemy ranks. Despite fierce resistance, Genghis's army pushed on and laid siege to the capital, Samarkand. After 3 months, the city fell, and Genghis plundered it for days. Afterward, Genghis continued his campaign into Persia, where he seized the trading cities of Bukhara and Samarkand. With these victories, Genghis had expanded his empire to include much of northern China, Central Asia, and Persia. However, he was far from finished. In 1223, he led his army into Eastern Europe, where they fought against the Russ's princes at the Battle of the Kalka River. The Mongols were victorious, but this victory did not bring about the conquest of Eastern Europe. In fact, Genghis died in 1227 while campaigning in the region. Nevertheless, his empire would continue to grow after his death as his successors invaded Poland, Hungary, and the Byzantine Empire. When we come back to the series finale, we'll explore Genghis's legacy and see how his empire changed the world. So make sure to stay tuned. You won't want to miss it. In addition to his military achievements, Genghis Khan was also a brilliant administrator and lawmaker. He established the Yasa, a legal code that governed the behavior of his subjects. It promoted religious tolerance and freedom of expression and remains an important part of Mongolian culture today. Another innovation introduced by Genghis Khan was the Yam, a postal relay system that allowed messages to be sent quickly across his empire. He also commissioned the first census of his empire, which provided him with valuable information about his subjects and their resources. One of the most important aspects of Genghis Khan's legacy is his protection of trade routes, particularly the Silk Road. These trade routes were vital for the exchange of goods and ideas between East and West, and Genghis's armies ensured that they remained open and safe for merchants. His policies of religious tolerance and respect for other cultures also contributed to the growth of trade and cultural exchange throughout his empire. Genghis Khan's empire didn't just shape the world geographically, it also left an indelible mark on history. His genetic legacy is evident in the DNA of modern-day Mongolians, with studies showing that most men in Mongolia share a common ancestor who lived around the time of Genghis Khan. This suggests that the legendary Khan sired a large number of sons, ensuring the continuation of his bloodline. Furthermore, Genghis Khan's empire facilitated unprecedented levels of trade, connecting distant markets and enabling the exchange of goods and ideas across Eurasia. This vast network of trade routes facilitated the spread of technology, culture, and commerce, leaving a lasting impact on the economies and societies of the regions it connected. Today, Genghis Khan remains a controversial figure. Some see him as a brutal conqueror responsible for the deaths of millions, while others view him as a visionary leader and reformer who forged a path for cultural exchange and tolerance. Historians continue to debate his true nature, adding to the enigma of this legendary warrior. Whether you view him as a ruthless conqueror or a visionary leader, one thing is certain: Genghis Khan's impact on history is undeniable. His empire reshaped the political landscape of Asia and Eastern Europe, leaving a legacy that continues to be felt today. The very mention of his name still evokes fear and fascination, making him one of the most unforgettable figures in history. So that concludes our two-part series on the warrior who changed the world. I hope you enjoyed the story of Genghis Khan. Now, if you did, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more epic tales of history's greatest legends. Until next time, remember, history is happening.